with more on the Cuba-Russian relations is Patricio Zamorano. He's a professor in the School of Political Management at George Washington University. Thank you for coming in. Let's start there with Castro. This is kind of a surprising comment that he may step down. What would that mean for Cuba, would you say?
Well, that's extremely important, and considering that his brother is actually not there in power anymore, so it's very surprising. And of course, we are not sure what's going on internally. We have no idea about new leaders coming out from the young generation that is taking over as ministers in the cabinet. So yeah, there is no doubt that that's a real comment. It's going to have very big consequences for the future of the island. And more than that, what's going on with embargo here that the U.S. keeps against the island.
I want to talk a little bit about the embargo, but let's take a step back and talk a little bit more about Russia and Cuba. This is a kind of a unique relationship in that when the United States looks at it, we all frame it back to the 1960s, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And yet the relationship between the United States and Cuba is kind of frozen in time. It's the same relationship. Russia's relationship, though, has been all over the place. Boris Yeltsin really had very little engagement. Now we see more engagement. What do we read into all of this?
Well, is coming back after the fall of the former Soviet Union. Cuba and Russia really didn't have a very good relationship until 2005, maybe. It's very interesting that the fact that the Prime Minister was actually there in Cuba in 2008. And Raúl Castro was also in Russia in 2012. So we see this new relationship. And of course, I would say that Russia is very uncomfortable because of the fact that the U.S. is affecting its area of influence in the Middle East. And Russia is very happy actually to penetrate a little bit into Latin America, which is, in theory, is the area of influence of the U.S. And not only that, we have to remember that the Prime Minister also visited Brazil, which is a very important country for the region. And of course, it's a world-class country now. So I'm pretty sure that the United States is going to feel a little uncomfortable with this visit, considering that Russia is not only selling this idea of more political relationship, but in terms of weapons also, security, collaboration in key issues like health, food. So it's actually very, very important what's going on in terms of this visit, right?
Let's talk a little bit about the United States and Cuba, because as I mentioned, it's been frozen in time dating back to the 60s. The Soviet Union has collapsed. The United States relationship with Russia has changed over that time. And nothing's really changed in terms of Cuba. Why is that, and do you see an opening now?
I think that is maybe one of the only signs that we have from the old age Cold War equation. It's still there. We have to remember that the United States has very good relationship with China, with communist China, with Vietnam. We have to remember that the United States had a very painful war against Vietnam. A lot of American soldiers died there. That's not the case with Cuba even. So I would say it's very ideological. We really need to open the country, the U.S., I mean, to a very realistic approach towards Cuba. In the United Nations, we have to remember that most of the country, 99% of the countries vote against the embargo every single year, and the United States is not actually doing anything about that. So, yeah.
Even polling here in the United States, there's no doubt about it.
70% of the Americans are against the embargo. Not only that, first or second generations of Cuban Americans, they are approaching the same general opinion. So basically 60–70% of the new generations of Cuban Americans don't agree with embargo.
And we're going to have to leave it there. Patricio, thank you so much for coming.
It was a pleasure.
Here on our end as well.